Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Documentary Club. I'm Jeff Jones. It's good to see everybody out there. Today, we are talking about the 13th or 13th. I thought it was the 13th, but I think it's maybe just 13th. A documentary that talks about the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. Interesting documentary, really hard to watch for I think a lot of us. It's not a fun documentary, but it does have a lot of really important information related to how um, how our society, the aftermath of slavery and the aftermath of abolishing slavery. And so I guess we got Mystic Jinx in chat. We'll see if anybody else is around. I know that it's a busy time of year and it's the middle of summer and everybody's kind of out doing all sorts of different things. So I hope you are enjoying your summer. We'll see how long we do the live here, but appreciate everybody for joining the premiere. If you get a chance, I would appreciate you guys checking out last week's video as well. For some reason, I think it's a really important documentary called Power. We talked about policing and police power and what it means, and so I'm going to throw the link in the description right here, or in the chat right now. Check that one out if you guys have chance. For some reason, the algorithm was not kind to us last week, and we only got about 20 views when we're averaging a lot more than that usually. So if you have time, check out Power. Last week's. Next week is a little programming note. Next week we're going to be switching gears and a little lighter of a note, and we're going to be talking about a documentary called Long Shot. I'm going to pull it up here just a second. And Long Shot is a documentary about a guy who was. Let me see if I can pause there, mute this. It's about a documentary where a man is accused of a crime or for murder, and he didn't commit it. And the documentary really features how the lawyers were able to find out and prove that he had a real alibi. He had a tight alibi. And I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert here. It involves the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. So we'll have a little bit of Larry David next week for those who love that show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Basically, what happens is you can see in the preview right now that he was at a Dodgers game and they were able to find footage from the Dodgers game and prove that he was, in fact, in the audience, in the crowd, thanks to an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was shooting that documentary at the time. So go check it out, Long Shot, and we'll be talking about that one next week. Just something a little bit more with a happy ending. Last couple of weeks, we've been talking about really heavy subject matter. And so you might want to come and check that one out. I am going to copy in the link right now. And if there's anybody out there that wants to join in, as soon as I can figure out how to find the chat, I wanted to do it through this method here instead of through StreamYard, which doesn't always give us the best one. So let me drop that into chat right now. And if anybody wants to join and talk in about the 13th or anything else, I will be happy to do that as soon as the chat loads. But yeah, interesting documentary, Long Shot, we'll be talking about next week. But this week, we're still talking a little bit about the 13th. There's a lot that was covered in this documentary that we didn't talk about. I think that's the story every week. You guys are going to hear about that. We don't always get to everything in every time, but we're glad to have you guys along for the ride. Really enjoy doing this. Enjoy covering, different documentaries. As usual, we will get to your documentary eventually if you drop us a comment or let us know. There's a Discord that we have as well if you're interested in that. definitely check out some of your documentaries that you want to talk about. Um, so if anybody wants to join, go ahead and click that link. Otherwise, it'll just be me talking for a little while about the 13th. We just kind of heard me talking about it, so I would love to hear. Oh, there's Katie. Why don't we welcome Katie into the show? Katie, nice to see you. Glad to have you back.
Hey, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Back to the real world.
Back to the real world again. After being on holiday, you were on a trip and you
Yeah.
did some musical gigs. Is that right?
My husband did. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
How'd
it
that
was a
go?
blast.
Awesome.
Oh, I have an echo. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that
Okay,
was just on my end.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I watched that last night before bed, and it's like, oh crap! I hate watching stuff like that before I go to bed.
Swimming through your mind. Yeah, it's a pretty heavy subject matter, but important. And if we're going to talk about criminal justice, I think we need to understand the history of it. And the last couple weeks talking about power, which was really about law enforcement, and then this week talking about the 13th Amendment and the aftermath and how the criminal justice system was shaped. I think it's really important that if we're going to talk about criminal justice, that we kind of covered these two documentaries together in a couple weeks, so we can have a better understanding of how our system developed, how it became to be what it is.
You know, did you learn about all of these things in school? I'm not sure how old you are, Jeff. I graduated in 82.
A little
We
bit older than me then.
we didn't, yeah, like 20 years or more. How old are
Might
you?
be, might be.
I'm not going to reveal it. All right. All
I
right.
think I was born before you graduated, but not long before that.
Okay. All right.
No, I
Well,
was born in '81. I'm not gonna lie about it.
all right. Well, I have
Yeah.
it. My daughter was born in 80, so there you go.
Mm.
Well, I'm pissed that I didn't learn about this stuff in school. I feel cheated
Cheated. Yeah.
that, whoever decided the curriculum decided that this wasn't important. And that's a huge problem in the
It is a
country.
tough one. I agree. Curriculum can vary so much from state to state, and I think we kind of brushed over the amendments, but we didn't really take them into consideration. Like we didn't go too deep into it. And I think I took one civics class that taught us the basics. But yeah, I think these discussions need to be had a little bit more in depth. I also kind of feel cheated, but then again, I feel cheated in a lot of areas of education. And as an educator myself, I use that as a guiding light when I teach. Like I teach writing, so I try to prepare students for college. I do an early college program where students can get college credit in high school, and I always use that as my guiding light. What did they not teach me, and what do I wish I knew going into college? And that helps me kind of frame it for the students. So I'm right there with you. Before we go any further, though, I want to welcome in Susan. Susan, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff.
How you doing today?
Glad to be here. Oh, I'm doing okay. This reminder of this documentary is kind of upsetting to me.
It is. Go ahead if you want to elaborate on that.
Well, it's so shameful for this country, and I it it's just hard for me to understand um, why people are the way they are, why people in power, especially, um, do such horrible things.
Yeah. I agree. It's hard to put into words sometimes, and I think that's why documentaries like this are important, and they can put it into words for us and kind of. But yeah, I agree with you. It was hard to watch. It's embarrassing. It's disappointing. You feel a lot of different emotions, and honestly, I personally, I'm not speaking for you guys, but I feel like we are helpless sometimes, and we feel like what can we do? We have no control over this. And I guess we just have to make our voices heard and continue to beat the drum and continue to educate people and to share documentaries like this about why our system is the way it is, and understanding the history is the first step. And
It is.
maybe I'll ask you that question, Susan. Do you remember being educated on any of this? Katie brought that up, that she didn't.
I graduated in 1976, so I'm much older than both of you.
Uh-oh.
And no, I learned none of this in school. So much of what's taught is it's hard to put into words. Is what Well, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not going to continue.
Well, I get you. Sometimes, I just to talk about conspiracy theories for a second. A lot of people will say, there's this conspiracy and this conspiracy, and then it's all secrets and it's hidden and it's the deep state and it's all these things. And I go, the real conspiracies happen right out in the open, right in front of everybody.
They do.
There's more real people conspiring out in the open in front of us to see, that I don't even need to look for the secret world, the underground. There, like when we talk about ALEC in this documentary, and how ALEC, this lobbying firm, partnered with politicians and corporations, it seemed like legalized corruption to me, where a corporation can push for legislation that helps them get cheap labor through the prison industry, or how they have a say, like JC Penney has a say in the lobbying of the laws of our land. What? You know what I mean? Like, why do they have more power than the voter? And that is that's disturbing as well in its own right. So ALEC is another one.
And that brings up Citizens United.
Citizens United, another one where, Mitt Romney famously said corporations are people. And I said, if corporations are people, then we should be able to put them in prison, huh? Can't do that, right?
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck with that. So, yeah, I do think, and the other, I talk about unintended or sometimes intended consequences, depending on who you are. But Citizens United also allowed foreign money to influence our election system, and Citizens United has pretty much been a disaster from day one. There are some people that would disagree with me, and they're welcome to have their opinion on that, but I don't see anything positive coming out from it. I only see more corruption.
I love how they name these things, Citizens United.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the opposite of what it is.
It's the opposite of citizens, right? It's citizens disunited, to be honest, right?
Wealthy citizens.
That's PR. United. That's all public relations people going, whatever we're gonna do, we'll call it the other. It's like everything seems to have a little shade, kind of shady. It's like when we just had Prime Day. Amazon Prime just had their Amazon Prime Day, right? So 16th and 17th this month. And then if you really track products, you'll notice that the product is, say, like $300, right? $300 for a TV. And then on Prime Day, they jack it up to $450 and then slash it down to $300. So it looks like you're saving all this money, but little do you know, they jacked the price up a week before, right? So it's all this shady kind of marketing and PR. and Citizens United is a great one. I always said during the Affordable Care Act, I always said they should call it Patriot Care, because then more people would be like, oh, it's for patriots and I'm a patriot. It's great, right? It didn't catch on though, unfortunately. So, over any overall comments that you picked out of here that that you'd like to share your opinions about this one, or did you learn anything? I think there's a couple things that I learned.
With the, Alec is so disturbing to me. And, it does things like that make you feel helpless, because it shows that the people with money have the power. You can think about all of these new laws that you want to present to your legislators to, like, for instance, I think a great law would be that unless an interview is recorded, it cannot be used against someone in court to convict them. And I think it would alleviate a lot of wrongful convictions just with that one law. But
you can't just take someone's word for it, is what you're saying?
Right. I mean, you see, and although detectives do record interviews, and they probably record all of them and then select the ones that are useful to them or are damaging to their case. And then they have the power to, with a straight face, just to testify in court when asked about it, that the recording malfunctioned, or they explain it away, or I didn't have a recorder at that time, and I wanted to make sure to get the interview because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to connect with this person again. So I just did the interview and didn't record it. But if detectives knew that they
It wouldn't
would
be
not
admissible.
be able to use that
Right.
as evidence unless they got it recorded, they would get it recorded. But it's just things like that make you realize that when you take that to your legislator and he takes it, if he even will take it to other people, the group is not going to be on board when they vote for it, because, frankly, the DA's council, the prosecutors have so much power with the legislature. And, they're funded. I don't know. It's just money. The people who get people elected, they are the ones who get their ideas put into law. So I don't know. That was
where the money behind them. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what Alec illuminated for me. That was the first thing I thought of. Another thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
When I was in, I think it was like 79 or 80, in my hometown, there was a lunch counter downtown that Black people were still not allowed to sit there and have lunch.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
I mean, and I knew, it disturbed me then. My father, I don't know, my father bought this government-funded apartment complex in the predominantly Black part of town, and he renovated it, and I spent a lot of time at that apartment complex, and consequently a lot of my friends that I would be hanging out with and running around with down there were Black, because that's where they lived. So, and all through grade school, my best friend was black. And so I didn't have racial thoughts. Uh, I wasn't raised with some kind of father with a KKK hood in the closet or anything. So,
Mhm.
um, not learning about it in school, some of these things, I didn't question things because I wasn't really seeing a lot of racism really in my
Right.
small world, but my world was small. I mean, I was from a family where, I didn't just go run around all the time and do whatever. Um, we had the kind of beaver cleaver kind of family where dinner was on the table and you all had dinner together, that sort of thing. But um, also, I believe this guy graduated a year ahead of me, and I think it was in 1979 they found this classmate hanging from a tree by
Whoa.
a belt with his hands tied behind his back. And
Jesus.
it, I think he was dating a white girl, and the town, whatever, the people in the town just didn't, uh, that group of people who obviously were here, that was their
What year
solution.
is this guy?
79, you can look it up. His name
Jesus.
was
Oh my God.
Mitchell Sanford, Sanford. If you just look up Mitchell Sanford, Enid, Oklahoma, you'll get
Wow.
the story. I think there's a guy named James Neal who he used to work for the newspaper here, and I believe he did an article about that, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, those things are all recent in time
That is
for me.
recent.
Yeah.
I
Um,
don't think I even was in the presence of a black person until, believe it or not, until I was probably in high school
yeah.
when I moved to Indiana. But I've never felt that there's any difference between them and myself, or people, or just people
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
with
Right.
different color skin.
And a lot of those, and I think the documentary points out a really important aspect to where this racism stems from, and it's the Birth of the Nation movie, where a lot of those ideas, those prejudices, stem all the way back to this movie that infected the nation, right? And it shaped people's opinions about what former slaves and African Americans were, or, and they branded them as others and rapists and murderers. And the documentary also pointed out that, historically, more black women were attacked by white men, but that's not the perception that the document or the film put out, that it was the opposite, that they show in this documentary. They show in Birth of a Nation, a woman jumping to her death over a cliff than rather than be subjected to a black man, right? So yeah. Personally, you
Yeah.
guys told your story. Like I from a small town in Wisconsin. We had the first black family move in when I was in high school. It's not that it was the first time I ever met a black person, but that's how, that's kind of where I grew up. And this is in the North, it's not like we're in the deep South or anything. And people had their own prejudices and we're all worried and concerned. And I'm like, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
Snowflake, you know what I mean? Like, what are you so fired? How is that changing your life? It's not. It does nothing. Yeah. And we fear what we don't know, I guess.
Well, that show used fear, to separate people, and it's not much different than how some people use fear today to help people believe what they want them to believe.
Yeah, fear is like one of the strongest emotions, right? And people play on our fear, and and I think that we need to acknowledge that when we notice people are trying to play on our fears, that should set off alarm bells, right? When people are trying to get us worked up over fear, for whatever it is,
It does
living
set
here
off
in
alarm bells. It
yeah,
it
it
does,
should,
especially with what's going on in this country today in
right?
so many different aspects. It's frightening. I mean, I fear for the children, their futures. Uh, how is that going to? And the problem is, yes, it should raise alarm bells, and I'm alarmed, but I feel powerless, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I I think I raised that sentiment earlier, that a lot of us feel powerless to do it. Like, we see it, we know it's wrong, but there's like not much we can do about it other than live good lives, be respectful to people, be true to ourselves, and show a good example to others and to
I
children
agree.
about how to act. That's all we can do, but that's important that we do that. And that does stem. I
Very.
think oftentimes we forget the effect that we can have on other people, and that something that you think was just like just a quick conversation you have with someone at the cafe, it might reverberate for years with them. So we have to remember, and that's why I bring up why words matter. What we say matters.
Very much. Very
I
much
want
so.
I wanted to ask you guys two issues that come up in the documentary, and that is truth in sentencing. So what do you feel about that? Because I have mixed feelings about that. That if you get 10 years, you should do 10 years. But the problem is that with the sentences that are like, they're inflated. We have inflated jail sentences because we have to continue to be tougher on crime, right? So we have this truth in sentencing that, especially in the crack era, that basically put people away for life, and they did almost their entire life over crack rock. And the thing that I wanted to ask you guys about truth in sentencing is how it takes power away from the judge, how the judge can't look at the facts on the ground or look at the person in the eye or see, is this person able to be rehabilitated, but they don't have a choice. The judge can't say, well, this is your first offense, we're going to give you 2 years in probation. Instead, the judge's hands are tied and they have to give him 15 years.
Mandatory minimums.
Right.
It's crazy in my book. And just like you say, it's case by case. I mean, it should be case by case in my mind. Because yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors that go into, a case of people. And
Right. And
that's
every
just
circumstance
all
is
that
different.
does is fill the prisons.
That's right. And that brings me to my next kind of question about the war on drugs. And I've been saying this almost out loud. I was like jogging and I was thinking, people are going to think I'm crazy because I started talking out loud while I was jogging. But I was saying, we've never arrested our way out of a drug problem, and we will never arrest our way out of a drug problem. I just don't
Right.
see it. I was watching our local mayor's race, and one of the candidates here had said, well, we only have one officer for, per 2,500 people, where the standard is kind of one officer per 1,000, and that will help us with the crime. And most of our crime stems from drugs, right? Whether it's theft, burglary, or drug use, I think most of that comes from drugs. And I'm thinking, wait a second, we don't need more law enforcement. What we need is more rehab facilities. That's what we need to get people off drugs and to keep them off drugs. That heals the community. That lowers the crime rate. And just throwing more law enforcement at it, just doubling your law enforcement, yeah, you're going to get more arrests, But all you're going to do is end up putting people more in the prison system, and that is a big money machine that the only people that are benefiting from more people in prison are the owners of the prison and the stockholders who have a piece in it.
And that seems to be the
Okay.
true motivator of these types of things, the war on drugs, the war on crime, is it seems like it's a scare the people kind of thing in one sense. Oh yeah, we want to, we need to lock up all of these drug users because they're, killing people and they're doing all these horrible things. When really is it just another way to fill the prisons so that the people who have a financial stake make more money? I would say, yeah, your previous question, it'd be nice to give the judge the power to sentence how he feels. And I truly think these mandatory sentences need to go away because someone might get lucky enough to get an honest judge who, is actually wants to do his or her job properly. But it seems like a lot of these sentences are based on emotion, how the public are feeling about this certain crime or whatever. And the sentences are so ridiculous that it takes away the whole concept of rehabilitation.
That's right.
Because
That's
there's
the
no
key right
chance
there.
for rehabilitation when you keep adding these sentences or making the sentences run consecutively or run consecutively instead of concurrently.
So I did see something here online that says that the First Step Act was passed by Congress in 2018, and it authorizes federal judges to impose a sentence below a mandatory minimum for certain drug offenses. So,
I thought we were getting away from
we're
that.
getting away with it. We're doing away with it here and there, but it's piecemeal, it's patchwork, and it takes
Yeah.
time. An incremental change is the change that lasts, but it also takes time, right?
The war on drugs should really only be focused on the traffickers,
I
people
agree.
that bring tons and tons of
Yes,
drugs into
they
this
have
country.
they have
A
put
drug
other people at
user,
risk. Yes. Yes.
going to prison just for using a drug, no
You
one
should be
should go to
put in
prison.
rehab, right?
You
You
should be
get caught
put
with
in rehab and spend that money that you spend keeping them in prison on their rehabilitation.
and we would be better off. We would spend less money overall, because if you're housing someone 3 meals a day and a roof over their head for the rest of their life, that's more expensive than paying for rehab.
Exactly.
And the taxpayer is just dumping money into prison systems, and what's the result? People getting rich off of it. People making a profit off of it.
People
I mean, don't
getting
get me
rich
started with
and
for-profit
ruining people's
prisons,
lives.
right?
Ruining people's lives who are already
Already behind the 8 ball kind of thing, right? They're already at a
exactly.
disadvantage, right? They're already at a
Exactly.
disadvantage, and then you're gonna, right? And it's like
They're
in the
just
documentary
throwaways.
during the
They're
crack years,
throwaways.
during the crack years, the guy said it's like taking a scythe through the black community and removing all the men, right? Removing all the dads. And then you go, and then the same people will say, where are the parents? Where are well, you locked them up. you
Yeah.
locked them up. And and a white Wall Street guy who gets caught with the same amount of powder cocaine gets a slap on the wrist, maybe probation. Oh, well, he's an upstanding citizen. We'll give him a break. You know what I mean? It's just not fair. And that's, we need equal protection under the law, right? We need it to be fair. Otherwise, it's not the right way it should be.
I wouldn't mind seeing mandatory sentencing for pedophiles.
Well, that's another one. Yeah,
They seem to get off so easy. I mean,
Isn't that funny?
compared to, yeah,
You know, I've been
Trump.
saying this for years. I was like, what is the public kind of clamoring for? Lock up murderers, rapists, and pedophiles. And what do? They let these pedophiles off easy. And I'm like, it's the opposite of what the public is kind of clamoring for. And I never understood
About
that.
destroying lives. Jesus.
Right. Yeah, I mean, don't get me started about the whole Epstein conspiracy. You know, I mean, it's not really a conspiracy. It happened out in the open.
No.
The DAs were turning the victims into criminals, calling a 14. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but calling a 14-year-old victim a prostitute. Well,
Yes.
you're 14. You're not old enough to make that decision to be a prostitute.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's
So
too much.
scandalous.
Yeah, so scandalous. And
the moneyed people that were involved.
that is an
them.
onion with layers that the more you pull off the layer, the stinkier it gets, right? It's
Oh,
definitely something.
Well, you know, if 1 in 4 Americans are incarcerated or have been incarcerated, which I think was the stat at the beginning of that documentary,
Jesus.
was it
Well,
not?
no, 1 in 4 of all prisoners in the world. I think.
Was that what it was?
I'm gonna look it up quick, but go ahead and make your point.
I mean, it's no wonder that families struggle, because if you have someone, a family member in prison, in jail, in prison, it's very expensive to just communicate with them. And if you don't put money on their books, they're not going to have enough food to eat to survive. They're not going to
That's
have
a whole nother racket. That's a
anything. It is. And so, I mean, it makes poor people more poor.
That's right.
And
yeah,
their
the
families.
stat is, and the families, right? And so you have a domino effect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So 1 out of 5 prisoners in the world is in the U.S. So like 20 to 25% of all prisoners of the world are in the U.S. The next country is China, and then Brazil, Russia, India, Thailand. But after China and Brazil, it really gets small. It's very small percentages.
But China has how much? How many more people?
Yeah, the population is so much bigger than ours, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So U.S. has 2.3 million, China has 1.6 million, but they have I think they're at 1.8 billion people, and we have 400 million. So do the math quickly. That's 5-6 or so times the amount of people, and right.
So that statistic is actually way more shocking than.
Well, here's what I'm looking at right here. If you guys wanted to see the percentages, so yeah, and it's hard to believe that we have that many more disproportionate criminals in our country than other countries. Now, let's be fair and say, well, some of these countries, they don't have a strong justice system, so they're not going to be able to. They don't have the law enforcement. They don't have the justice system to catch criminals and put them through the system. And that's a fair account. But when we have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prisoners, that's the number. That's wild.
That's it.
5% of the population of the world, 25%
It's
of the
big
prisoners.
business, Jeff.
In the land of the free. In the land of the free,
business.
Right? Big business, right? Yeah. Absolutely, it's big business, and that's where I'm not a believer in for-profit prisons. I think if you took the profit out, all of a sudden the desire to lock people up and to have longer prison sentences slows down. Places like ALEC don't exist. I mean, lobbyists like ALEC don't exist because there's nothing in it for them. If there's no profit to be made on the backs of a prisoner, all of a sudden those lobbyists disappear. So I'm not for profit prisons. I think it should be run by the state and there should be no profit involved.
Agree.
I agree with that too.
But that could be considered socialism. The crazy S word that people are so worried about. Anyway, that's my own take on it. But I don't know if you guys had anything else you want to add in about the 13th.
I have to admit it's been quite a while since I watched that, maybe a year or so ago. So, my memory's not sharp.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I remember the overall gist of it, but
Me
to
too.
pick
I
out
had seen
certain
it.
parts of it, it's difficult.
Absolutely. I think I saw it when it came out, and then I watched it again, and then it was like watching it like for the first time again when I watched it last week. So there's just so much that's in there. Yeah.
I mean, I know the overall
Gist of it, right.
gist of it, yeah.
You get a little
So it's hard
refresher
for me
watching the premiere, yeah.
Yeah, I did on some of it, yeah. But yeah, it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
It is heart-wrenching to see.
And the state of our country today, you look at all of this history, and you would hope that has brought about change. And, in the last, how many years? 8 years? 10 years? I mean, it's rearing its ugly head more than ever, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity. And, these...
But so many seem to have suddenly become so bold with it and not ashamed to declare,
hate, to declare their own hate, right?
Hate. Yeah.
Hate kills. I think it's another one that people don't understand, that being full of hate shortens your lifespan. It lowers your quality of life. If you're constantly wound up and hating on someone else,
I'll just say, hopefully
it's bad for your health, nonetheless.
It shortens their lifespan.
Yeah. For some, maybe not all, but for some. But you can't just live like that, you can't just live in constant hate and fear of everything around you. It's going to wind you up, and it's going to short circuit you. I do truly believe that. You have to be level-headed and balanced, and
everything around you. When you live with that in your heart, it affects people around you.
I agree
as well.
Well, I want to say thank you, Katie and Susan, for joining. I always appreciate your contributions to this. It makes it a lot more interesting to have you guys on here. And so thank you again for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I promise next week might be a little bit more fun, because we'll be talking about, a positive outcome, actually. Not to spoil it for you guys, but the case is out there. It's been out there. We're talking about Longshot, and about I talked about it at the top, but I will kind of preview this for you guys, just so you know. If you guys want to take a look at the documentary, it's airing on Netflix right now. The blurb is: when Juan Catalan is arrested for murder he didn't commit, he builds his case for innocence around raw footage from a popular TV show. And this is the documentary about that. I can tell you that
that's only 40 minutes.
There you go. It's an easy one for you guys. Yeah, quickie. And then a little lighter topic. I know it's about a murder, but the guy builds a case for his innocence. And so we will have a little bit of Curb Your Enthusiasm and Larry David next week, because that is a part of this case. And so I don't know if you guys are all Curb Your Enthusiasm fans. I definitely am.
Loved it. Yes,
absolutely.
And I've seen this, but I'm going to rewatch this one.
There you go. Only 40
I can
minutes.
find 40 minutes. Yeah.
Absolutely. you can do
Yeah,
that.
it was very good.
I want to thank you, ladies, and I want to thank everybody out in chat who has been out here. I don't recall is a member and a contributor. So thank you very much to all the members and everybody else out there who chatted. Looks like we have Mystic Jinx out there, and I guess Susan was chatting, and so I got everybody. Appreciate you guys joining. Like and subscribe and share. If you can, it helps the channel grow, and then we'll be able to do even more of this. It's always better to have more people and more subscribers, so that's what we're trying to do, grow the channel, and we will continue to bring interesting documentaries, and I will say thank you for Jack as well. Jack will be here one of these times. He told me he overslept again. He took a nap. I'm going to tell him he's got to stop eating these giant lunches. I think maybe that's what's doing it. We'll find out. But we'll be back with Jack in the future. I'm going to give him a hard time for missing out this week. But next week we'll talk again about Long Shot. I appreciate everybody joining, and that's it. I appreciate it. I'm Jeff Jones, and thanks Katie and Susan for joining along today. And we'll see you guys on the next one.